Hello, welcome to AWS Made Easy Ask Us Anything live stream. This is episode 21. With your co-host Stephen Barr, and joining us, the co-host Rahul Subramaniam. Rahul,
Hey
how are you
everyone,
today?
doing very well. How have you been?
Same. It's been it's been an interesting week. It's been really smoky here for the last couple of days.
Yeah, I was looking at your Twitter feed. You finally built that air purifier, didn't you?
Yeah, that was called the Corsi Rosenthal box, and it worked out really well. Let me post a. Let's see if I could find a. For those of you from last time,
You should check out Stephen's Twitter feed. He posted a link to.
Let me post. Let me see where my tweet is. Here it is. So basically, it's 4 air conditioner fans duct taped together onto a box fan, and the box fan is pushing air upwards, so it's pulling it through those air conditioning filters. And
seems like a simple solution.
It's been really, really useful, especially my 2 little ones. They have not been happy about the smoke.
I can imagine. I wonder what the filter looks like maybe after a few hours of running. Like, does it turn gray and black?
It should. I mean, if it's working right, it should. So hopefully...
Seattle has been going through some really, really bad air quality situations.
Well, I'm looking out the window right now and can literally see almost nothing. But this is more fog than smoke. But here's the Space Needle camera at the moment.
Oh, there you go. It's panning.
Yeah, so
it's panning.
It's panning. This is the Panocam, and you can see little bits of things peeking through. But we're all counting down the days. It's 3 days until it's supposed to start raining, and then it won't stop till March.
Bad time to be in Seattle.
But we had a really fun weekend. We ended up going to this place called Goldendale. There's an observatory out there. And I remember 2 episodes ago, I'd said I'd got a drone. And so I wanted to show you what the observatory looked like. Check this out. So that's the Goldendale Observatory.
Oh, nice.
And then notice the nice clear air out there.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm still learning how to get good shots, but that's the view in the distance. Really nice and quiet, and it was really fun to be out there.
Very cool.
And then for anyone in Washington, definitely go to the Goldendale Observatory State Park. So what it was a bunch of amateur astronomy enthusiasts who they built an amazing telescope. I think there was an eclipse coming up and they really wanted to see it. They bought a 200-pound blank piece of Pyrex glass and then spent 5 years polishing it into a 24.5-inch mirror. So they were really planning ahead for this eclipse. And they built this really nice telescope and built the observatory dome around it. So that's what was in the picture. Let's see. Put it back there. Yep. So that dome that they built. So this is the original dome, and they've just renovated and added this other annex to it. But this dome is the original dome that these amateur astronomers built, and eventually it got donated to the state. And they have really knowledgeable presentations. We came back for looking at the sun the next day through these very careful 99.9% light filters.
Very cool.
And the statistic that I learned that I thought was interesting is that if you take the sun and Jupiter and Saturn, that accounts for 99.99% of the mass of our solar system. So everything else, all the other planets, all the asteroids, all the comets, everything else is 0.01%.
Makes you feel incredibly small, doesn't it?
But we're lucky that our slice of that 0.01% is pretty good.
Correct.
This is my other little bit of footage I got. This is the river near where we were. And then let's see, I'll zoom. Well, I'll go up quickly, and we're in this little gorge. This is the border of Washington and Oregon, and this is
Oh,
a
lovely.
peach orchard. There's a big wind farm in the back because this valley kind of forms a natural corridor for wind. Yeah, these are all fresh peaches. We bought a couple boxes of peaches we've been going through.
Nice. How high have you been able to get the drone?
Oh,
Yeah.
450 feet and no higher.
by constraints on the tech or by fear of
constraints on the legality of it. I think it can go a bit higher.
Okay.
But
the legality of, so the technicality is on the legal side.
But this is a Mavic Mini, and so it's 249 grams because apparently all of the restrictions come in at 250. So this is light enough to fly under the radar, so to speak. This is how about you? How was your weekend? What have you been up to?
Pretty normal weekend. My son had a soccer game that he kind of literally convinced the coach to get him into the team. And it was one of those inter-school games. So a first for us. We are just delighted that he took the initiative and did it all by himself. And they actually ended up winning the tournament. So it was a pretty entertaining Sunday. But otherwise, relaxed, normal week.
Oh, fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. That's fantastic. Well, let's see. We have
a packed schedule today, right? You have lots of stuff to cover.
Pretty packed. I'm going to queue up the our new announcement transition. Give me 1 second to do that. And then we have a few announcements for the upcoming week. Here we go. Let me put that in. All right. So we have a couple of announcements for the upcoming couple of weeks. Our first one, I'll put this on the screen here. We've got an interview with Marcos Valmaceda, and we're going to be doing an all Graviton episode. So that's next week. And Marcos has taken the initiative. He has started a AWS Graviton weekly newsletter. So this is a sample. He kind of aggregates a lot of the Graviton content. So we're going to have a good Graviton-based talk with him coming up. So that's next week. In a few weeks' time, we're nailing down the exact date. It's going to be around the 13th of November. We're going to be talking with AWS hero Frank Pachot, I believe. And he is an AWS data hero, and he's also a developer advocate at Yugabyte, which is a horizontally and vertically scalable Postgres database. So I'm excited to see how that compares to obviously the AWS native offerings, because he's obviously very involved in that. So we'll have that interview's coming up soon. Let's see. Oh, and then tonight, it was supposed to be last week, but it's tonight. We are doing our first Dev Spaces hackathon, and that's going to be over at our sister channel, the DevGraph channel. I love this cyberpunk aesthetic. So please indulge me here.
I'm actually really looking forward to this one. This one should be a lot of fun.
So the plan is of having some friends over who are developers in the Seattle area. We're going to order Thai food. We've got some tables spread out. We're going to hack on Dev Spaces for an hour or two. Well, I think probably 3 hours. And then we'll post some demos. I told my friends, okay, we each want to come up with a little repository at the very end of it that shows, okay, one of them is going to plan on doing a Dev Spaces Neo4j demo where they take data and use AWS Comprehend to then load data about various topics into a topic graph. So we'll see how that goes. Looking forward to that. And the idea is that this is kind of a trial run, but I think it's going to be something that we want to expand to local universities. And so stay tuned for that. We're really looking forward to the Dev Spaces hackathons that we can open up to the public and just have fun, have some food, and see what we can do with dev spaces, see new ways that we haven't thought of using it.
Exactly. Really, the hackathon's actually a really neat way of exploring the boundaries of the tools, and very quickly getting a lot of feedback as well about what works, what doesn't work. And I couldn't be more excited to see the interesting things that people create with dev spaces. I think I truly believe it's a great enabler that allows you to get stuff done very, very quickly without getting into the weeds of setting up stuff. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how people leverage this.
I was telling you earlier, one of my friends who I've got him started using dev spaces, and he was a real cloud skeptic, do everything local, and he is completely converted. But it's also good because he's a cyclist, and so he's able to just bring his iPad and a little Bluetooth keyboard with him, and so that's been a great enabler for him to be able to just have his development environment everywhere, not have to have it being dependent on his Dell laptop.
Couldn't agree more. I'm a big fan of the new iPad Pros that, the M1 iPad Pros. I mean, they literally are like having a, insanely powerful machine at your disposal. But again, I don't feel like I use it at all because my IDE just runs in the browser. So I have an incredibly powerful machine available in the cloud where I
Many
get
incredible, powerful machines.
in fact, many incredible powerful machines, or as powerful as I need it to be, with a click of a button. And it's remarkable that I don't have to set up anything locally at all.
It's an amazing mind shift, and I think if I had to go back to a time where I didn't have access to it, I would definitely have to change a lot of the habits I've made over the last couple of months of getting used to developing in this way, where I've got 5 or 6 going at the same time, because I can think about, okay, I've got one branch over here that I'm playing with, I've got one over here, and I know I need to merge the changes back, but I can keep it going. It's really nice to have a few of them just sitting around and not having to worry about, there's no cost to switching between different projects or different branches of the same project. I've been really enjoying that.
Exactly. Now looking forward to this.
Another announcement is the big one. We've got reInvent coming up. So
That is the big one.
and Rahul, you're giving a talk. This is
Yes.
the non-stop way to find AWS recommended savings opportunities, sponsored by Cloudfix, who also sponsors this episode.
Correct.
And many of their episodes. So first, I guess, about reInvent and about your talk in particular. So first, about reInvent. So you've been to how many reInvents, would you say?
I think this would be my 4th or 5th, if I'm not mistaken. I've lost count. It's been a while. I think COVID kind of created a 2-year gap in the middle. But yeah, I've been to a few at this point.
So if this was your first one, what would you do? What would be your advice to first-time reinventors?
I'd say reInvent is actually incredibly overwhelming for any first timer. I mean, just the sheer volume of people over there, the number of sessions, there's this tendency to not miss out on anything. And the reality is that the way reInvent is organized, there is absolutely zero chance that you're going to be able to attend all of those sessions. So I think the focus or my advice to anyone who is coming to reInvent is, it's a great opportunity to not be in a bubble, but at the same time look at what other people are doing. So spend some time on the show floor, go look at all the other solutions that people are building, and then spend time getting yourself familiar at least with all the services that people are talking about. I mean, there are hundreds of them at this point. So just getting familiar with the terminology, the names of the services, because there are sub-services within larger services. Like if you look at Systems Manager, there are probably 25 different services under that. It just gets very complicated. But as long as you get familiar with them, you can go back and review all the other content that AWS will post online. And you can go review them. You can go be very targeted at understanding what each one of those services do. But I think breadth is my summary for what you want to get out of reInvent. Try and get
Okay.
as much breadth as you possibly can in terms of services, what other people are doing, and so on. And then you can always deep dive later. You can't afford to deep dive during that week at reInvent.
Okay, that's really interesting. Because I've seen a lot of these attendee guides that get published, and they are very well. Many of them are topic specific, but that's an interesting point. Is that you could also go for breadth, get an idea of what's the latest, and then deep dive later, and that way you get to change the people you're interacting with, change the, uh, I guess the different. You'll be in different places, different venues within reInvent, get to experience more. Oh, I can empathize with what you're saying. That for some people, it could be overwhelming in scope.
I remember my first one was absolutely overwhelming. Like I had this schedule planned where I thought I'd be able to attend like 10 sessions a day, and I barely managed one session each day because all the venues are kind of far away from each other. And back then, the app didn't have the mechanisms of scheduling things where it took location into account. I mean, now the app does as you start using it. But yeah, it can get extraordinarily overwhelming. The other thing I'd say is reInvent is all about the people. So build as many relationships as you can, because those are the people you want to talk to right after reInvent. You want to meet them. You want to, have deeper conversations about the content. So build as many of these relationships. Go to all these sessions that either companies are organizing or AWS is organizing. Go to them, meet a lot of people, build those relationships, build the contacts, and then go back to them and follow up on them post reInvent.
To get out of your comfort zone, introduce yourself to people, get to know people, and everyone's there for basically the same purpose, right? They're all
Exactly.
AWS enthusiasts. They'll want to meet people. Although, if you truly are um, introverted, I noticed that one of the developer heroes put up a attendee guide for introverts. So you can also do
Yeah.
it your own way. So this is really neat. Look this up if you need to. But if you're not an introvert or you don't want to be an introvert, go out there, meet people, and learn, make some good contacts, network,
Absolutely.
and then deep dive later, right? Because you can't possibly, you don't have the stamina to go to every single session about the topics you're interested in, and it wouldn't be possible because there's just so many simultaneous tracks.
Yep. Oh, one other thing, wear comfortable shoes. That would be my advice. The amount of walking you'll have to do over the week. Um, yeah, you absolutely want comfortable shoes.
That is a good piece of advice. I'm putting that up as our banner. So wear comfortable shoes. All right, that's a good point. All right, well, and then to your talk specifically. So, what's going to be the main topic about your talk?
So, my talk is just sharing a lot of our experiences about cost savings. Now, as the context of CloudFix is that we manage about 40,000 AWS accounts of our own. And that is quite a nightmare. And as we were looking to save money, we kind of realized that cost savings isn't really as easy as it's made out to be. And a lot of the tools, while they do a bunch of very interesting reporting, they don't really save you money. And a lot of the burden of actually saving the money falls on each individual that's trying to do this. So also the a lot of the cost savings comes from very, very disruptive changes that you need to make to your environments. And that just causes so much anxiety within the engineering organization that they are more likely to prevent you from getting any of the savings than help you get them. So we had to take a completely different approach. And what I do in this talk is basically talk about all of our learnings of what failed or what we failed at when it came to cost savings, what our realization was, and what our approach to cost savings is over the last decade that we've been trying to do this. So we have evolved a very different approach to cost savings, and that's what we share.
Excellent. I'm looking at, and key to that is different, but AWS recommended.
100%.
Right. And like you said, zero impact. We're not saying, oh yeah, just rewrite everything to be fully serverless. right?
Correct.
I mean,
I
that's
mean,
a great
it's a
idea
very
in the long
pragmatic.
run, but
Exactly.
or
I would say it's a very pragmatic approach to operating efficiently in AWS rather than, this very theoretical way of running things efficiently. So yeah, come to the talk.
fantastic. And I'm putting up the name of the talk. It is PRT 086. And so you find that, just look for the AWS session catalog and type in PRT 086 in your app. You can add that in. It's in the cost optimization area of interest. So we are
Correct.
looking forward to seeing that.
And I will be around after the talk as well. So if you just want to come and say hi, please do. Would love to meet people.
All right. And then, speaking of meeting people, we also have a watch party going on.
Correct. So we love the keynotes, by the way. So, whether it is Adam Selipsky's keynote or Werner Vogel's keynote or Peter DeSantis' keynote. Now, usually when you're in the main hall, it's incredibly crowded. Um, Very little scope for actually discussing the announcements as they're coming in. So we are organizing a watch party. It's an invite-only watch party. So if you're interested in coming to it, please reach out to either Stephen or me. We would love to have you over. And yeah, we're going to have some eats, some snacks, geek out about all the announcements being made, share experiences, share thoughts about where these announcements might be headed, and just look to have fun.
Oh, really looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you again, Raul, being on the same continent, and then meeting all of you, our viewers, and other reInvent attendees. Just having a good time, talking about the keynotes, talking about all things AWS. Really looking forward to that one. All right, well, let's jump into the first article of today. We're going to have a quick 30-second break, and then when we get back, we're going to do Amazon AppStream. So let's jump right into that.
Awesome.
Great, here goes.
Public cloud costs going up and your AWS bill growing without the right cost controls? CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by focusing on AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe with zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. The best part? With your approval, CloudFix finds and implements AWS fixes to help you run more efficiently. Visit cloudfix.com for a free savings assessment.
All right, so our first article of the day is Amazon AppStream 2.0 now supports creating Linux images using the graphical user interface. So I know it's cliche, but is this the year of the Linux desktop?
I don't think it's still there, but it's a great way to take your applications that are monolithic and single tenant, things that you're running on premise on a server. It becomes way easier to take all of that and move it into the cloud. Now, it's not cloud native by any means, but think of this as a mechanism of very efficiently managing all of your infrastructure in one place and streaming these applications downstream. I actually want to call out, I am a big fan of, AppStream. We've got a whole bunch of products in our portfolio that are a perfect fit, things that traditionally were running on Windows boxes in your, on-premise or on your LAN. You can now take them and literally stream all of them from AWS using AppStream. Now that you have Linux support, that just increases the scope of all the applications that you can now run. I'm going to call out SolidWorks and give them, credit for an absolutely amazing use of AppStream. If you go to the SolidWorks website and you sign up for a quick trial, they literally provision a CAD software for you on demand using AppStream in a matter of minutes. And you can actually log in through your browser, start doing CAD designs and drawings for the period of that trial. And all of that is delivered to you via AppStream. I think it's one of the most incredible ways of delivering that experience. If you go to the Try Now button that's on the top right of that particular screen, it
Okay,
will
we
take care of, just say Try Now. It'll ask you for some credentials and stuff like that. But yeah, you can pretty much
That's
get
really
started.
neat. Our online product trial. And
Yeah.
this is obviously a very GPU heavy program. Actually, my first 3D design class, I took a random class at the mechanical engineering department about 15 years ago when I was a student, well, at least that long ago. And that was in SolidWorks. And that was really
Yeah.
fun.
And it's pretty neat. And the fact that you can actually run such a graphics intensive application remotely on the browser, and it's a great experience with AppStream because they've optimized the way that those UIs are delivered to you. I mean, it literally makes something that is non-SaaS into a SaaS product. And that is a game changer for a lot of organizations that don't have the means to rewrite all of their applications from scratch to be cloud native. So this is probably a very easy mechanism of leveraging, um, a service to turn your or to SaaSify your product. So yeah, take a look. It's been around for a while. In fact, it's been around for 5 or 6 years, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe even more. It uses pretty much the same technology that underlines all of the Citrix and the VMware stuff that you've had for years, or the remote desktop setup that you've been familiar with. So go try it out.
The idea that you can have a completely fresh installation of an OS and have an application on top of that, and then have essentially a remote desktop into that application all within a few seconds. That's a really great idea. And again, it is interesting how these things have come full circle. I remember, again, back when I was in the University of Washington and also Bellevue Community College, what they would do is after you logged out of the machine, they couldn't ever guarantee that a student hadn't done something to mess up the machine. And so they would literally re-image it every time you logged out. And so when you logged out, it would take, at that point, they were using some, PXE script, and it would take 10 minutes. And so when you logged out, there was just this downtime while the computer re-imaged itself. And at that point in time, that was the best way the admins could come up with making sure that a particular student didn't mess up a computer that they then have to troubleshoot later. They just re-image after every one. And now this is basically that same concept, but instantaneous and cloud-based.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I think when we just talked about dev spaces, I mean, dev spaces is a similar concept, though the protocol and the mechanism is slightly different. But the idea that you can launch these otherwise extraordinarily heavy, resource-intensive solutions in a multi-tenant way in the cloud in a matter of seconds is truly remarkable. So yeah, I'd urge the audience to go take a look at it and see if they want to take a lot of their on-premise monolithic services that they're running today and managing the disks and the hardware, all of that stuff. Just get rid of it and put it on AppStream and make it multi-tenant, like let people subscribe to it and use it.
So looking at the contents of the article itself, so they have either command line or graphical interface to create Linux AppStream 2.0 images.
Right.
Let's see. They give you a link to the AppStream 2.0 admin guide. They've got the AppStream 2.0 management console. It's available right now in all regions where AppStream 2 is offered.
Yeah. And I would give this simplifies for sure, because it takes a lot of the complexity out of on-prem solutions management. And AppStream is actually a really easy service to use. So this gets a 4 from me.
Cool. And yeah, I think it's a great article. It would have been neat if they had a link to, like I said, SolidWorks or some other usage of AppStream.
Yeah.
And something that is, why did they develop this? What was an app that they wanted to use on Linux that either wasn't available on Windows or Mac, or was going to end up being a cost savings? I always like examples.
Yeah.
But this is really neat.
Yeah, I think the biggest example for the traditional enterprise software ecosystem is historically, you've always needed either a consultant or some heavy duty IT organization to come in and install a lot of the software for you on specific machines and servers. And then I don't know if you remember back in the day, we used to have these hardware keys that you would need to install on that particular hardware to make sure that people weren't copying it and licensing. And like there'd be so many, hurdles that you'd have to jump through before you could actually use the software.
Oh,
I
I
think
remember those 25 character keys. I think when I was a kid, I had the Age of Empires one memorized.
Yeah, so there's just so many things to manage, and I think AppStream just simplifies the delivery of these solutions with literally no friction, because now as a software developer, you are in control of what access you give people. So you can provision based on whatever criteria you have. You can literally provision the instance, have full control over what happens, and all that the user does is use the software within seconds of deciding to want to use it. And it's not days before, like in most traditional software, you go to the website, you sign up for it, then some sales guy will call you, then you spend half an hour talking to the sales guy, then they will set up another follow-up for installation with some of their consultants, then they'll walk you through and get you a training session going. So by the time you actually start using the product, it's at least a week, if not more. More often, it's way more than that. But this just gets you going with the product within seconds. And that, I think, is truly remarkable.
I've been involved on both sides of that kind of transaction, and you're right. It's just slow and feels almost ceremonial. So I'm glad that we don't have to do that.
Exactly.
Oh, all right. Well, any final words about AppStream 2?
No, I think that is it.
All right, great. Well, our next article we're going to be talking about is SageMaker Autopilot. So here we go. All right, SageMaker Autopilot experiments are now 8x faster with new ensemble training mode powered by AutoGluon. So that's a bit of a mouthful there. But so going back, I guess, from a machine learning perspective, so we've got SageMaker, Amazon's machine learning platform, SageMaker Autopilot, where the idea is it will take your raw data, you have tabular data, and in machine learning parlance, things that you think might be predictors are called features. And then with Autopilot, it can transform that data into higher order features using things like one-hot encoding or TF-IDF on text columns. And then building on that, the idea of ensembling is maybe you can run multiple models and then combine them, either take the average, take a weighted average. And so the idea is that parts of your data may be more predictive with say a random forest, but at the extreme end of one of your feature sets, a different model might be more predictive. And so you want to be able to combine these models into what's called ensembling, and then you take the average, and then you see how good that average does at predicting. So that's SageMaker Autopilot ensembling.
Right.
And so now with this announcement, we can use ensembling powered by AutoGluon. So here is the AutoGluon page. AutoGluon, AutoML for text, image, and tabular data. So I'll post this link in the description too. And this seems to be nicely paired. They've got the announcement post here as well. The new managed AutoGluon tabular experience on the SageMaker Autopilot.
Yep. So I don't know if you know this, Stephen, but Autopilot is very dear to me. That was my very first reInvent talk that I did.
I didn't realize that.
Here's a link to the YouTube video. So Kumar and I did it when Autopilot was actually being announced. So I was part of that talk where we describe what Autopilot can do and what it does for us. So yeah, it was an absolutely amazing experience. Thanks to AWS for inviting me over to talk about our experience with Autopilot and SageMaker. So yeah, Autopilot has a very dear place in my heart for that reason. And so, like you said, it just keeps getting better and better with everything that's happening here.
Wow, that's really neat. I'm going to go back and watch that talk later. So auto gluon and ensembling models. Have you used this one yet? Have you used auto gluon yet? I haven't.
I haven't used the auto gluons yet, but the increasingly, just from our internal use cases standpoint, we've realized that a lot of the standard models do much more for us than trying to build absolutely custom ones. Now, I know for a fact that there are a bunch of use cases out there that require custom modeling, but we have taken an approach where we're trying to see if the commonly available models which have been trained on tons and tons of data can actually do a better job for us, both from a cost and efficiency standpoint, as well as from a operational efficiency standpoint. So we're just trying to figure out if those are better for us. And so far, to be honest, while they are not as accurate as some of these custom models, I think the trade-offs are totally worth it. Now, in any model that you train, and even with autopilot, there are kind of three dimensions on which you make the trade-off. Number one is how long does it take to train, and what is the cost of training? The second one is what is the cost of actually getting the inference? The third is the latency of the inference. That means how much time does it take to get back an inference value, and the accuracy of it. And you have to trade off those choices. Sometimes it might be worth getting an answer that has an accuracy of say 95% versus 99%, because the latency, you can get back an answer in a fraction of a second instead of it taking a few minutes to get back an answer. On the other hand, some of these inferences could be way too expensive and you want something cheaper but gets you in the ballpark. Maybe even 80% is good enough for the particular problem that you're solving. So given that there are all of these trade-offs, we've tried to experiment with a lot of the standard models out there. And so far they've been doing pretty well for us, because the costs of, retraining and managing the entire pipelines is pretty expensive. And we end up avoiding all of that because the marginal cost or the marginal value from doing custom models isn't just there for us. I'm not saying it's not there for others, but for us, it's not been that valuable.
Yeah, often, right, you get this situation where to get that last couple of percent, you grow by orders of magnitude in terms of model complexity.
Exactly.
And often random forest gets you pretty far.
Correct. I mean, if you just use, XG, I think we've generally found standard XGBoost based, simple models that have been built with tons of data, tons of generic data, end up performing nearly as well as some of the other, very custom stuff. Or if you want the same cost, same price, same trade-offs, I mean, yeah, you don't gain very much by building a lot of custom. So where we can, we try and avoid it. I mean, like when it comes to things like NLP and stuff like that, we wouldn't even dream about building our own custom models. We'd much rather use the set of standard services. And now that a lot of these services allow you to actually create custom keywords, custom tags, custom, definitions, you can add on to it in a very simple manner. That just makes so much more sense.
And it's neat that you can quantify this trade-off. So you can get when you really need that maximum accuracy, you can know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
But then I was thinking back to a while ago, I had an interview for a position as a data scientist. And the interviewer asked, if you were stuck on a desert island with only one machine learning model, what would it be? If I was stuck on a desert island, I don't know if I would need any of them. But I suppose I would take linear regression because I could work that out in the back of a rock.
I would agree.
Or a stick in the sand, I suppose.
Exactly.
Random forest might be the next one. That was an interesting question.
Neat.
All right.
So we have to score this one. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think for people who are building tons of custom models, this definitely simplifies things because it gets stuff done a lot faster. So definitely simplifies. I'd give this 3 out of 5 in terms of content, because it's not the easiest thing to wrap your heads around. There's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of general talk about what exactly this does and how it does it. But
See, I think that's machine learning in general. That's not Amazon's fault.
That I would agree with. I think it's generally machine learning.
I think we should throw in another half a cloud. I mean, they did. Look at, they've got examples. They've got some real numbers here. All right, I would bump this up to 3.5. There you go.
I can live with that.
I think it's, if you really need the accuracy, if this is what you really need, then obviously waiting 8 times less is a good thing.
Agreed.
All right. Well, let's take another quick break. And then when we come back, our next topic is going to be CloudWatch metrics. Now, if you thought 8x was good, wait till you hear about 150x. All right. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, it'll be CloudWatch time.
Public cloud costs going up and your AWS bill growing without the right cost controls? CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by focusing on AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe with zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. The best part? With your approval, CloudFix finds and implements AWS fixes to help you run more efficiently. Visit cloudfix.com for a free savings assessment.
All right. Amazon CloudWatch metrics increases throughput by 150x. That's quite a jump. Okay, so they're getting this 150x by 50x higher capacity and 3x faster rate.
Correct. So one of the big challenges with CloudWatch really was that if you built any system that is even reasonably complex, you would run into a lot of limits on what CloudWatch could do. You could only send metrics at certain intervals. You would end up kind of clogging the pipeline. You would end up not ingesting, or the logs would take a while to kind of show up because they would just trickle in very, very slowly. And if you were trying to do any kind of real-time analysis of what's going on in any complex system, that was starting to become incredibly hard. And the more components you had, it just got that much more complex. So this announcement that basically adds 50% higher capacity, as well as the fact that you can actually send up to 1,000 metrics per call. Like, instead of making 1,000 calls, literally 1,000 metrics can be sent in one shot in one call. That's pretty neat. And the throughput that you can now get is about 3x greater. So, I mean, this definitely is a big, godsend. I mean, we always questioned whether CloudWatch was really designed for scale, because we would keep running into these bottlenecks, and then you'd end up looking at a bunch of other alternatives like, Loki and a bunch of, alternative solutions, or build some. I've known of some AWS customers who built their own logging system based on the ELK stack, which is just very, very hyper customized. But again, it just takes so much effort to build a stable and reliable service that you always wish that you could just use CloudWatch to do that for you, but always kept running into issues. And I think this resolves a lot of the bottlenecks for most customers. So I would, urge everyone to go take a look at CloudWatch and make it your default mechanism of logging.
Yeah, it's always much better to use things that are the native solution than to. It's always fun to configure a bespoke thing, but that approach doesn't scale. Correct. Not like getting Amazon to do it for you. I wonder why they were able to make such a big jump. I wonder what is the underlying shift or change that supported this. Because you rarely see 50x or 150x.
Correct. I'm not sure that this was a big software change or anything like that. I just think that they were these were most likely very soft limits. As they were launching the service, they were trying it out for a while, and as more and more complex systems got on the AWS platform, they started getting a demand for higher throughput throughput and capacity, in fact, on CloudWatch. One of the symptoms, I mean, this is more like an error that would show up because of these rate limits, was that if you actually went to the CloudWatch console and you queried for a particular log in a out of a very complex system, you would run into API rate limits or limits where you literally could not get the logs out because the system would just be hammered to a point where nothing would come out of CloudWatch. And that's a bad, sign for CloudWatch. So I think this was an imperative. They really needed to kind of just allow for a lot more capacity as well as throughput for it to be useful for most customers.
Well, that's really neat that they've done this, and hopefully it encourages more people to use this instead of, like you said, rolling their own solutions. And yeah, it's hard to imagine that this wasn't a soft limit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it was a soft limit that allowed them to. I mean, and I think one part of it might also be that they now have as their data centers are growing like crazy, CloudWatch is, collects an insane amount of data. It's literally logs for every transaction, everything that happens in your system. So the fact that now they have a lot more data centers, they have a lot more capacity at their disposal, I think that for the first time, they're actually able to provision a lot more of these very high-scale services and loosen up those constraints that they had earlier.
And neat enough that it's in all public regions. So it's not one of these. Correct. I always wonder why there's some very region-specific rollouts. I'm sure you could do an interesting data science problem to really tease out, okay, what differentiates these regions? Why do some regions get certain features, but then some features are to all regions? But I guess for something like CloudWatch, you really wouldn't want any kind of region-specific performance.
Correct.
That would be really...
And I think it boils down to the fact that a lot of AWS services use other AWS services. So in the early days, there was this, cascading rollout mechanism where typically in US East 1 is where they would launch a service first and then grow across all the AZs within US East 1. And I think because they had like 6 AZs, if I'm not mistaken, they were able to actually test a whole bunch of scenarios out within that one massive AZ. So US East 1 typically is where you get the earliest access to any service. And once they established that the service was working well there, they would start migrating that over to the other regions as well. So I think that's kind of the history of multiple region rollouts. But from a higher order service standpoint, like CloudWatch Metrics, which actually probably uses a bunch of compute, uses probably something like Elasticsearch behind the scenes, or whatever mechanism of indexing all of these logs exists, including services like S3. I think the fact that they now have a lot of the underlying API thoroughly tested and rolled out across a large number of regions, they are able to also roll out these higher order services across regions.
That makes a lot of sense, right? If they get that fundamental layer, whether it's RDS, their indexing layer, compute, and now all of these other services that are built on top of that, they could be rolled out simultaneously.
Exactly.
Well, what do we think of this article then?
Oh, this definitely simplifies the use of CloudWatch. I think a lot of the complaints that people have had in the recent past about CloudWatch kind of go away with this. So I would absolutely give it a simplifies, and this gets a huge thumbs up. It doesn't need a lot of explanation. The explanation is super crisp. It doesn't need a lot of examples because people are already using CloudWatch. So I'd give this a solid 4.
There we go. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of good information here. I like also this embedded metric format with logs up to 30 dimensions. This is exciting. This is good to know you can not be limited by the amount of introspection you want to have onto your applications.
Correct.
All right. Well, our next one is the Athena upgraded query engine. Let's jump into that right now. Here it goes. post the article here in the comments. This is Amazon Athena announces upgraded query engine. I actually thought Jeff did a great summary here.
Agreed.
The new features are 50 new SQL functions, 30 new features, 90 query performance improvements, and then there's the link to the documentation.
Exactly. So Athena, for those of you who aren't familiar with the service, is a SQL-lite engine that allows you to write SQL and query a whole lot of different data sources under the hood. So it could be, you could start querying data in S3, you could query data in Redshift, you could query data in any of the RDS databases, you could query data that might be lying, as file somewhere. It could be pretty much anywhere. And there are a lot of connectors or adapters that are available with Athena. And at the end of the day, you can literally write SQL queries to get data out of there. And once you can get the data out, using SQL queries, you can then export them or expose them via QuickSight and do all of your business analytics or business intelligence, all the slicing and dicing of data that you're traditionally familiar with, tools like Tableau or the likes. You can do all of that with QuickSight. So for us, Athena actually is at the heart of all of our BI solutions, or the BI pattern that we kind of implement across the board. So the fact that this new engine has a whole lot of new SQL functions, it just makes writing these queries super simple. There are tons of query improvements that are automatic or automagic, which is absolutely neat. You don't have to worry about all those nitty-gritty details. So I actually absolutely love this announcement. I think it's pretty neat that they've got it done.
It's interesting that it's integrated with the Trino project here. So this is the underlying engine, Trino, a query engine that runs at ludicrous speed. Which I wonder if they borrowed that from Elon Musk and the D series. Well, I like that. Ludicrous speed.
Correct.
And even the idea of taking a language, right, which is initially built for SQL, and then being able to say, well, if you've made this investment to understand this idea of joins and inner joins and columns and thinking about data in this way, then by using that same language to talk to many more data stores and not just SQL databases, but like you said, other places where data could be S3 buckets, anywhere like that, you can really leverage that investment that you've made into learning SQL.
So one of the very interesting projects at AWS is the Particle project. That's PARTIQL, where they're trying to use this SQL-like language. I mean, again, SQL has a lot of restrictions of what you can and cannot do, but Particle is a SQL-compatible language, which started off as a language for using a SQL-like, query pattern for DynamoDB. But over a period of time, I think the thinking, and this has been there for a few years now, the thinking is that this becomes the language for pretty much any data store anywhere. It's SQL-like, it's semi-structured, gives you a lot of control, gives you a lot of power for the kinds of queries you want to make. And it doesn't just limit itself to the likes of DynamoDB. You could query almost any data store that exists, including Kinesis or S3 or any of the other ones.
That's a really interesting way of kind of separating concerns, right? Because typically, when you first learn SQL, you're really thinking about a particular data store that you want to access.
A relational data store, basically.
Right? But now being able to say, okay, here's a language for accessing data, and you don't really matter what is that type of data. Correct. Doesn't really matter as long as there's an adapter or a connector. Exactly. It's the language and the way of thinking and the data model that and how to join and how to deal with nesting that is now being able to span different data stores.
Correct. I mean, with nested data, you're effectively talking about graph databases here. So you do graph databases. Semi-structured is things like your NoSQL, data stores. We're talking about DynamoDB, Mongo, the likes, or anything that's even stored in JSON, format on S3. And then, of course, you have all of your traditional relational data stores or columnar data stores, time series data stores. that absolutely can be queried as usual with SQL. So um, I really like reading about Particle generally, and there's lots of very, very interesting stuff about it. So take a look at it.
I'll put a link in
yeah.
the comments for everyone. So, all right, Particle. Well, then, so going back to the Athena upgrade, so we've got Trino. Looking at the article itself, it says, okay, so this is a strict upgrade. This is all features of
Yes.
version 2 plus more enhancements.
Correct. And given the number of query performance improvements that they've got over there and the number of SQL functions that they've added, this definitely simplifies the use of Athena dramatically. So I'd definitely give it the simplifies tag. And in terms of the announcement or the documentation, I am swinging between 3 and 3.5 on this one.
All right. Let's give it, let's say 3.5. So what would have made it need to, what would they have to have done to cross that 4 threshold?
I think having a bunch of very straightforward use cases to say, here's what this unlocks. I know that there are a bunch of functions, there are, a bunch of query performance improvements, but if you just took, the new SQL functions or the new features, and there are tons of them, 30 of them, and 30 new features and 50 new SQL functions, showcasing a few examples of the kind of things that it unlocks would have been incredibly valuable. They've just not put it in a very consumable fashion yet.
It's interesting. Now that I'm digging into this a bit deeper, looking at the new geospatial functions, because before I've used PostGIS, which is really neat, but it's neat to say like select star where distance is less than 30 miles circle. Things like that are really neat, and I think being able to do that on a much wider and broader set of data instead of having to use PostGIS. That's the only geospatial data I've used. But being able to do that on a much wider range of things.
Correct.
Like if you had JSON that happened to have longitude in there, then all of a sudden you can do geospatial.
Correct. Now it looks like they've actually highlighted this match recognize, pattern in here. But what is very interesting is the fact that you can actually use SQL to do anomaly detection and identify scenarios where your, either your sensor data is just, off for whatever reason, or, geospatial query is another great example. So I just wish that it'd been more explicit about, that match recognize is not so much about recognizing what or trying to match stuff, but it's more about trying to find anomalies, or it should be about finding anomalies. And identifying a few very crisp use cases would really help customers. So that's kind of why it's a 3 for me.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to give this a try. I'm definitely looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, we've been using Athena quite extensively. So yeah, it's definitely give it a shot.
Well, it looks like we're at 9:58. Should we mention the last one or save that? I think we should save that for next time.
Yeah, why don't we save it for the next time? Because it makes sense to dive deep and talk about things. So I don't want to cut that short. So why don't we leave it for next time?
Yep, I agree.
We had a ton to cover today.
Well, so I guess to summarize, we have a lot of new announcements that seem to be all simplifies, which I was very happy about that. And then summarizing back to our announcements, make sure that if you're going to reInvent, that you sign up for PRT 086. Message Rahul and I about the watch party. And then I'll be posting about the Dev Spaces Hackathon, and we'll do a fun live stream over on the DevGraph channel. Really looking forward to reporting back to you, and hopefully we come up with some really fun demos.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next Tuesday. And that next Tuesday, remember, our Graviton talk with Marcos. That's going to be a really fun episode, and we'll see you next week.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, here you go.
Is your AWS public cloud bill growing? While most solutions focus on visibility, CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by finding and implementing AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe. There's zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. We've helped organizations save millions of dollars across tens of thousands of AWS instances. Interested in seeing how much money you can save? Visit cloudfix.com to schedule a free assessment and see your yearly savings.